Guys, Sunday, May the 4th. OMG, what happened to April? We're already in the fourth month and we're chugging along, people. How is everyone doing? Um, some may not be doing great, some may be doing great. Um, but in any case, especially for those who are not feeling it right now, um, or not doing that great, just remember it's minute by minute sometimes. And I hate using quotes and cliches, but this one is so applicable to so many things. This too shall pass. Everything goes in a flow. Everything resolves itself eventually. Um, and sometimes we have to feel what we're feeling in order to move through it. So, um, I have some very interesting stuff to talk about today, and I was kind of hyped to come on today and talk about these things. I will be doing number two divine lesson today. Um, and, you know, it seems like the other side is very kind of excited for me to do it. So I'm going to do it. I had sort of plans on saying something else for lesson number two. But as usual, I got, overwritten. Like, I don't matter. By the way, what's going on with my hair today? Whoa, it's very humid. It's pouring out there, so I got the whole humidity thing going on here. So just bear with that, please. But anyway, um, we're going to, as usual, let them have their way. Also, I was kind of told to look out for the little orbs coming through today. So let's see if they do. I never see them. You guys are the one that see them and spot them out. And some of you even give timestamps on them. Um, so let's see if they're going to visit today. I can't wait because they said they'll show up that way today. Um, but anyway, some people are saying, "Hey, your speech is perfect tone, perfect speed." Some people are saying, "Could you speed it up?" Um, Here's the thing: they typically slow me down. As you all know, I have the patience of a gnat, and my preference is to do things quick and fast and speed through them and blah, blah, blah. But they slow me down when I'm talking. I've noticed that big time. So you can always do the setting on 1.5 for the playback speed, and that'll speed it up for those that are just like being tortured. I can dig it. You know, me no patience, Vena. Um, I want things to move quick too, but I just can't talk any quicker because they're blending themselves with me. So just go to 1.5 or 1.25 even, I think. So here we go. Uh, let's do some recaps first. Let's start with those, okay? Uh, I've been telling you guys for months now the enemy of my enemy is my friend, blah, 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 blah. And the Republicans will be turning against him and this administration. And I've given you so many examples of that. And here's another one. But this one is a doozy. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Not sure if some of you saw it, but she put out a tweet. And it was, I had to fact check this. I'm not on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, But I did have to fact check it because it just seemed unbelievable because she's been the greatest rah 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 for the president. Well, she put out a tweet condemning him, um, and it's just unbelievable what she said against him, against his policies, against the stuff he's doing. You've got to look it up if you haven't heard about it. It is literally unbelievable. Um, she's pissed with the president. She's pissed. Now, a lot of people are saying that has a lot to do with Laura Loomer, who Marjorie Taylor Greene and Laura Loomer have this, little battle against who gets more attention from Don the Con. And so Laura Loomer's like back in the picture with Trump. So I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene's feeling like the third wheel. And she is not happy and she's spitting her nasty venom out there. But anyway, if you read her tweet, you would almost think it was a liberal that spoke out against Trump. It's just a beautiful sight to behold, and more of that is coming, as I've been telling you. I did a video, couple videos back about Kamala. I just devoted a lot of time to Kamala. And one of the things that I said was that she had to take some time off because she was like psychically bruised, and she had to get herself together. She didn't really know what she was going to do yet, but I told you guys she would emerge. She would come out, and she did. She came out, and she's going to be steadily coming out more and more and more. She's going to play an important role for this country, but she's going to carve out her own role. It's not going to be like a traditional type of role. She's going to carve out her own role. And I don't think she knows what her end game is yet, but she's found her voice and she's going to be using it, and she's going to be much more vocal, like I said in that video, and be prepared to see more of her, but in her own role that she's going to create for herself. Please don't say, well, what is she going to do? What is she going to do? She's figuring this out, but she's going to be more vocal and much more visible. And that's a beautiful thing, especially for the people that miss her dearly, and miss her passion and her fire. You're going to be getting that. And she is going to be sort of like Teflon, in the sense that what they're telling me is that this administration is going to be so angry with her, but they're not going to be able to touch her. So that is interesting, and that's a good thing. They're just not going to be able to touch her. And she's going to have a very powerful, strong voice, and a very powerful, strong, I want to say, position that she creates for herself, which will eventually migrate into other stuff and other stuff. But she's going to be like Teflon. They're going to want to get at her, but they just won't be able to. They just won't be able to. So that's going to be good. Let's see. Oh, I want to read this email I received. Dear Vena, do you remember when you made a prediction about Trump picking a tall white woman with stark blonde hair was your exact description, who was a lawyer, and you thought it was for the Supreme Court? Well, you actually saw Pam Bondi. He picked a tall white woman with stark blonde hair as Attorney General. Just wanted to remind you of another prediction that came true that you forgot to mention. Thank you for that. I did forget to mention that one. Yes, I remember that prediction. That was long before he even thought about picking Pan Bondi as Attorney General. And I did see a tall white woman with very blonde hair. Um, and like they said, and they were a lawyer, so I naturally thought it was going to be the Supreme Court. It didn't dawn on me that it was going to be Attorney General. So thanks for that. I really appreciate that. Uh, let's see. All right, here's some stuff that's going on that's fascinating, and I'm gonna save one of the last ones for last because I gotta talk about this one. But thanks everybody who protested on May the 1st, um, all around the country and in my state. There was a humongous Bernie Sanders protest in Philadelphia, that just, it was mind blowing. And even though a lot of people got arrested, we have such a good DA and a good mayor that it's there. Those arrests aren't going to really go anywhere. I'm so sure majority of those people have been released already with no kind of serious repercussions. By the way, shout out to my ITD. He knows who he is. Um, okay. Um, so, and to all those that protested, beautiful, wonderful. And like I keep telling you guys, I have said this. I think I started saying this before he even physically took office January the 20th, but the protests will just increase, increase, increase. Last week I told you guys that they will get, at some point, they're going to turn a bit violent, but that's going to be needed, and you'll understand why. It's going to be, um, there's just going to be floods of people at some point, and the people will have the last say. I'll just say that. The people will have the last say. And, you know, the beautiful thing about all of us having our own way to protest, there are some people that are seriously led to protest that way. And there are some that do it other ways. I am one of those other way type people. I am that keyboard warrior. I also do some donations, not only to political causes, but to humanitarian causes. But there's just so many different ways to do that. So if you're not protesting, don't feel guilty about it. Sending love to the protesters is beautiful, okay? That's a beautiful thing. Send them love. Send the energy of love out there. And just let whoever needs it pick it up, okay? Um, Australian Labor Party, they had their election. Do you not love it? Um, they won. The Liberal Prime Minister won again. And not only that, he picked up seats. So Trump is really, the far right has championed hard for, their cause. And we saw it rejected in so many countries now. Germany, France, Canada just recently, now Australia. And the beauty of that is that those people in those countries have a much more saner approach to humanity than a lot of the people in the United States. But we're getting there. We are getting there, okay? It's a slow process for us, but we're getting there. And like I've told you, this whole Trump getting sort of reelected thing is definitely for a reason to weed out all of that yuck and that far right negative cruel agenda, to just weed it out, and for the people to decide that they don't want it that anymore. We have to be on a much more humane type of consciousness, and so that's what's happening. But in order for that to happen, there's stuff that has to happen, like the far right has to get sick of their own far rightness, and we're seeing that a lot of that with the FAFO stuff, the F around and find out. Um, and not that we're wishing bad on anyone, but how else do some people learn? It has to affect them directly, right? So, yes, a lot of people are suffering the consequences of it. However, however, never count out divine love and how it works and how it rights things and fixes things for people. Okay. Um, this whole thing is just sort of amazing to watch. It's amazing. It's fascinating to me because when you really step back, you can see, oh wow, there is a complete rooting out of this stuff and an exposure of this stuff, and it's, I've predicted before, the Republican Party will become null and void at some point. Um, and okay, so all right, let's move on here. Um, Many people commented on my request. I requested people to start liking more and more videos. Okay. And I even noticed a slight uptick in you guys liking mine, so I appreciate that. But especially these political people that are out there and courageous, people, it takes 2 seconds to like something. I just don't understand how people have such a hard time with it. I really don't. Is it that you don't think about it? It just skips your mind, or I don't know, but let's try to get into the habit of doing that, especially for those, being courageous and putting stuff out there for us, because it does spread, the reach. And we don't want people silenced. So let's just consciously make an effort to like. And any video you see that you know that you're going to be in tune with, just like it. Click. Done. Really not that hard. It's really not that hard. Something interesting that I want to talk about too. Bukele of El Salvador, the president, he's now having second thoughts about housing housing people in his El Salvador CCOT prison. Now, here's the thing. There was an op-ed done on this, and there were some quotes that he made directly, and that he's kind of rethinking. He gets money from the United Nations, okay? So, the United States is only paying him $6 million, right? And he gets, I don't know, tens of millions from the United Nations in loans and grants, okay? And so the United Nations is now considering that there's like humanitarian violations. And so they're thinking about withholding that money from him. So now he is having second thoughts about doing the bidding of this administration. You got it's simple math, but I just love the way divine love worked that out, because 6 million versus tens of million, it's like the choice is clear for him, right? So I just love that for him and his country. He could potentially wipe out tens of millions of dollars just by trying to appease this wannabe dictator in this country. So just thought you all would like to hear about that. Uh, let's see. Don the Con asked the Supreme Court to end status for 600,000 Venezuelans. And I just can't help but remember that Venezuelan woman within a crowd of other Venezuelans just, I love Donald Trump, 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 Trump. Do you remember that woman? And then she got back on and she was just, oh my God, how could he betray us like this and that? And now he's going to ask that these hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans be considered person non gratis, right? And of course, we don't wish that on them. Um, but this is one of those type of things where your actions have consequences. You didn't mind other folks being deported, right? They didn't care about who else was being affected. They just thought that they were safe. Same with the Cubans. So that is where empathy and caring for humanity comes in. That when you start caring for others, even though you're not affected, okay? That's the sign of true humanity. Okay? Like I said, I told you guys before, I am not basically affected by hardly any of this Trump stuff, and haven't been so far. However, my heart bleeds. I am truly enraged by the tens of thousands of government workers that have been let go from their jobs that they've held for God knows how long. I'm enraged by people just being kicked out of the country just because they're trying to get a better life. And look, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care how they got here. My personal opinion is if they got here and are literally working, trying to better their life and their family's life, they're not illegal to me. They're just not illegal. They're visitors and trying to, eventually get some type of citizenship. Give them a path. Give them a path. Let them continue to work and leave them alone. Leave them alone. They may not have been able to do things the so-called right way. Okay? And if they're not committing any crimes, who cares? They're not bothering anyone. But anyway, I have my own things list that I am upset about that's going on, even though it doesn't affect me. But a lot of these people, they don't understand, nor did they feel it until it directly affected them. And they're the ones that really need to learn the empathy, the compassion, etc. So, and this is how they're learning. Not all the Venezuelans, by the way, feel that way, I'm sure. And a lot of them, just like a lot of the Cubans, probably didn't, vote for Trump. But a lot did. And so, it's like it didn't affect them and they didn't care until it affects them and now they care. So we've got to learn, and some of these folks are just learning the absolute hard way. Okay, now I wanted to save this one for last as far as what I wanted to discuss. So NASA, they release videos a lot of times, and there's one video that was just released 2-3 days ago of this huge. So what it is there's a screen that kind of blocks the actual sun that they're showing, right? That they use, because if they don't, it will, I guess, damage whatever camera lens they're using. So you can see the screen blocking it, but you're able to see through it somehow. So there's this huge white orb that is shown moving across, and then it comes back, moving across, comes back. Now, huge. Now, if you look at pictures of the Earth comparable to the sun, the Earth is like this tiny little dot, okay, up against the sun. Well, this orb type of thing that they're showing covers a good amount of space of the sun. It's not as big as it, but it covers a good amount of space. And for those of you that don't know, in my first book about my near-death experience, one of the things I described was when I was taken out into space, and I was shown different objects and living beings and stuff like that in space, right? But one of the things that I saw was this humongous spherical object out in space. And it was so huge, the way its presence out there. I thought in my spiritual conscious mind, I thought it was a planet, right? Well, my companion, my guide at the time, basically read my thought and showed me a zoomed up version of this spherical object. And this is all in the book. And it turned out to be that it wasn't a planet that I was seeing, but it was a ship. Okay? It was a ship. And so when I saw this video of NASA releasing this footage about this spherical object moving across the sun, several times, it just zoomed me back to being out in space and seeing this humongous monstrosity of a ship, right? And I'm thinking as I'm looking at this NASA footage that there's so many of these out there, right, that are traveling amongst the universe. And I'm so glad that they caught that, because more and more information is going to come out about that, and etc. But that truly was a mothership that I saw that I describe in the book. And that's another reason why I've put in my videos about, the extraterrestrials, that motherships don't actually land here on Earth, because 9 times out of 10 they're bigger than Earth, and or comparable size. And for them to even get really close to Earth and Earth's orbit, it would just be disastrous for us. They can't. So they send out these other lesser type of ships. But long story short, I just wanted to say that if you haven't seen this footage, just go look it up. And even if it turns out that the footage is not real, but I believe it is. Um, these type of objects do exist, and I'm amazed that NASA released this. Um, but it's a good thing because we need to know that we need to become more and more used to the fact that there are races of beings out there that are traveling, that are in proximity to us, sort of, even though the sun is like really far, but it's not far for them. And so I just found that very interesting. And the size of this thing, it just really, it really confirmed what I saw out in space with my guy about the size and just the breathtaking magnitude of these ships. Okay, so I just had to talk about that. Um, oh, someone had asked me about Mark Carney, and excuse me. Hi, Bina. Thanks so much for your brilliant talks. Can you please talk about Canada's leadership throughout the year? A tarot reader says she gets that Maple MAGA will be in power later in the year, even though the Libs have won the recent election. Thanks so much. So, what I see is that as far as Mark Carney goes, I think that even those that voted against him will sort of start coming around to appreciate him. Um, I believe he was born for this position. I wouldn't be surprised if he served. Can he serve 2 terms? I should have Googled that. But I see that Maple MAGA, which is Paul Pavier or whatever the heck his name is, Polyev, um, he will eventually be back somehow in the government, but in a much lesser role, and he'll be like a thorn in Carney's side, but he won't rise to a top power. Excuse me. He won't rise to the top. Mark Carney will do a lot of good for Canada and be appreciated more and more by Canadians. And like I said, even those who initially opposed him, they will come to appreciate him. And it seems like he's going to change a lot of things, but for the better. He seems to be very liberal, but well balanced in his the way he leads. He's going to use some of the conservative type of ideas or kind of their wishes, but he's still liberal, but he's going to like kind of blend them in a way that kind of almost makes everybody happy. And even those who initially oppose him will start to support him more and more. And like I said, Paul Pavier or Pavlevier or Maple MAGA, I see him, like I said, being a thorn in his side, but not rising to a top position, a top position. He'll probably somehow skirt back in some kind of way. And I don't even know, I know nothing hardly about Canadian politics. So I don't even know how that's possible. But it does seem like Maple MAGA will get in some kind of way. But like he stays there. Like he doesn't rise higher or something. And I'm sure my lovely Canadian listeners will educate me, so I appreciate that. But Carney is who they need right now, and he's tough, he's fierce, but he's fair, and he's a decent guy. He's a very decent guy. So I hope that answers that question for you. Um, let's see. I must have lost the other ones, but okay. So let's have our divine lesson number 2. Sorry about that. I had to put my hair up because it was really getting on my nerves. Okay, so divine lesson number 2. So I want to start out with a kind of 2 stories that I was told to tell. And I've told one of these stories before. Um, Probably many of you don't remember it or didn't hear it because it was way, way back. But at one point in my life, I was working for a country club, not a country club, software. I was working for a country club, but I was working for a software company. They weren't paying that great, but hey, I was working, et cetera, et cetera. And I have never had problems with my throat or coughing or anything like that. But one day, boom, I developed laryngitis. Couldn't talk. And my job at the software company was strictly being on the phone. It was customer service. And so I had to call out of work and tell them, basically whispering to them, and even they could hardly understand me, but I was like, I can't come into work. I've got laryngitis. And whoever I was talking to at the time said, well, if you can't come in, then we just consider you, you quit. And I'm like, but I can't work. Like, I have a temperature, I've got laryngitis. I can't come in. And they're like, okay, take care. We'll send out your final check. And that was that. And it was so sudden and so unexpected. You know, I didn't even really have time to be devastated by it. But long story short, soon after that, I was, and when I say soon, I mean within a matter of days, a actual real job opportunity came up that I was able to apply for, which I did eventually get. I wouldn't have done that had I been working for this software company. My throat healed up probably by that night, that same night. It just miraculously healed up. It came on in the morning and was gone by that same night. Okay. Um, and the job I eventually got was a better paying job, and it was just a better overall job. Okay. But yes, for the first day or two, it did seem a tad bit devastating, unexpected, out the blue. Um, and I had a young son, very young toddler, and here I am out of a job. But okay, situation that was story number 1. Second story. Um, I was in the grocery store one time, and I was behind a very elderly woman and her grandson using the ATM, and I was next in line behind them, and they finished their transactions. And when they walked off, I walked up to the machine and was getting ready to put my card in when I noticed her card coming out. She had forgot to take her card. I grabbed the card. Meanwhile, the people behind me, no, I'm sorry. It asked me, did I want another transaction before it spit out the card. I was getting ready to press no, so that I could have the card returned when the person right behind me, yeah, say yeah. Don't yeah, we can get some of that money from there. And and then other people like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, I hit no, got the card and ran after the woman and gave her a card. She was so thankful. And I heard a couple of the people behind me, they called me a bitch, whatever. But that's something I wouldn't even, and that has happened to me, giving people back their ATM cards somehow. I either find them or they're still in the machine. That's happened so many times. I can't even count, literally. But it's just something I would never do. Never think it just isn't in me to do that. So, the other day I was in the store, I bought something, I tapped my card, and I typically usually always put it back in my wallet. But for some reason I didn't. I laid it down on the counter, grabbed the items, put them in my purse, and walked out the store. Backed up in the parking lot and was getting ready to pull off when this woman comes out, runs right behind my SUV to block me from moving, and says, Miss, you forgot your card. And I was so thankful. I thanked her profusely, etc., etc. But I say that to say that in this story, that gives you a sense of how the energies that you put out in life come back. Okay? She could have easily taken the card and used it before I even realized that it was missing. Because nowadays you can just tap, right? And, do what you have to do. And she could have done that multiple times because I would not have realized it till I got home. Okay? So that's the first thing I want to give you guys as something to hold on to, okay? And that's something that they told me to remind you of. And in the first instance, and I hate assignments, by the way, but I'm getting ready to give everybody an assignment. And that's not from me, it's from them. But it's not an easy assignment, but you don't have to write anything down. You don't have to do any work other than just a little reflection. They want you to look at your life as a whole, okay? And see all of those different situations where, as in the first story that I gave you, right? How something so not good happened initially, right? Turned out to work in your favor and set you either on a better course or a better path, or turned out to be one of those blessing in disguise moments. Okay? So that you can really see and grasp how divine love, or whatever you want to call it, the universe, spirit, doesn't matter. Some people want to say God, whatever the force and presence of existence is to you, okay? Whatever you term it, whatever you call it, whatever you think of it, right? How it has weaved itself and worked in your life. Look back. Imagine your life as almost a movie. And think about all those different incidences where things turned out so much better than you could have imagined. And last week, when I talked about Another facet of how divine love works. Okay? I asked you guys, you have to look at the whole picture, right? Remember I told you this? Sometimes we just see that rough, jagged edge. But then eventually, what I'm asking you this week, to look at the whole picture, okay? And be honest about it, okay? Love is wholeness, okay? We don't always see the whole complete picture, but there's a wholeness to love. There's a completeness. And love will put any props in this play that we're living, any props it needs to, any actors that need to be in the play, it will put in the play of our life in order to move us a certain way, in order for us to grow, and in order for us to learn. So, your assignment is to think back and just look at how it's woven itself in your life, worked its magic. Okay? Connect those dots in your life. Connect them. And understand that love was that force behind every prop, everything that happened in some kind of way. Okay? And, you know, a lot of people are extremely empathetic. They look at things happening to others and, you know, it just, their heart bleeds, and they just don't understand how love can act a certain way when such horrible things happen sometimes to people. But you have to realize, like I told you last week, okay, to love's sense, okay, love, like I said, will use any type of circumstance or prop in order to fulfill either the lesson, the karma, the growth, whatever it needs to do. Because the end result will always be better. So, the very last story that I would like to tell is, I tell in my first book, I describe one of my lives that I was shown by my guide was myself as a black slave woman. I was very big and I cooked. And I had had such a cruel, harsh life. I was abused terribly. I was beaten at times. All I ever did was cook for other slaves. And yet I still maintained a positive outlook on life and on... I didn't understand all the spiritual principles that I understand now. However, in that life, somehow, subconsciously, I still maintained a positive outlook on life. And my guide remarked on that. And they showed me the life and all that it entailed, But they also showed me, in conjunction with that, okay, sort of like a pre and then after that life, okay? And I was so satisfied afterwards, because when you're spiritually comprehending things, you comprehend things on multi levels, okay, many different layers of understanding things, okay. So I was able to understand and see, living the life that I did, all that I went through, but my understanding of it sort of in an after sense. And I was so satisfied, and I had learned so much, and I had deemed it such a good life, because from that perspective I didn't look at things as necessarily good or bad, but I looked at them as they enabled me to understand and to blossom and grow my spiritual self. Okay? And so, to those who are empathetic and your heart bleeds for those, etc., understand that each spirit will get a sense of fulfillment over those things that they've went through in their lives, whether we deem it good or bad. And I'll go into that even more at some point, but I just wanted to kind of say that now. So take a look back over your life in a wider sense, and just look at how it's unfolded and love got you to where you needed to be. And if you do that and honestly look at it with the objective lens, okay, you will see how love worked in your life in some type of capacity. All right? And that's all I want to mention in this lesson, which is an extremely important lesson, and one that they wanted me to say. Okay? So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I appreciate you. Let's remember to like those posts, and take care.